What is going on, everybody? My name is Jon Solo, and welcome to Star Wars 101. Today we're discussing the main antagonist from Rogue One, Director Orson Krennic, because I think he deserves a little more spotlight than he received in the movie. Don't get me wrong, I think Rogue One was pretty fantastic, but because it was a standalone movie that introduced dozens of new characters, there just wasn't enough time to adequately flesh them all out, Orson Krennic serving as an example of this. And that's a shame, because Orson Krennic is really a great character. Anyone who's read the Catalyst prequel novel or the Rogue One novelization would probably agree. So in the spirit of that, I say it's time we shed some light on the guy. Here are 10 interesting facts about Orson Krennic. Number 1. The basics. Orson Callan Krennic was born on the planet Lexrule in Satavran City, 51 years before the Battle of Yavin. He's a human being who stands at 1.9 meters or 5 foot 11 inches tall. Number 2. Gifted. At the age of 15, Krennic earned himself a spot in the Galactic Republic's Future Program. This was a program designed to collect the best and brightest students from across the galaxy and help them become the Republic's next generation of scientists, leaders, and citizens. Although his listed area of excellence was architecture, Krennic's school counselors also noted that he was easily able to manipulate other people. After graduating from the program, he rose to the high ranks of the Republic Corps of Engineers. This led to him overseeing large on-world and deep space construction projects. Number 3. Old friends. The Future Program is where Orson met Galen Erso, who was there for his skills in math and science. The two were fast to become good friends, and Krennic seemed to think of himself as Galen's protector, despite Galen insisting that he didn't need protection. Because Galen was more of an intellectual and lacked some social skills, he was bullied by other students and would often get into arguments over politics and scientific theories, the typical things that people argue about. Because he would refuse to back down until the person he was arguing with admitted he was correct, the arguments would often get heated. At the first sign that things were going to turn violent, Krennic would come to Galen's aid and settle the dispute with his fists. Number 4. The Shuttle. Krennic chose to fly in a Delta-class T-3C shuttle, which was an earlier design model of the much more famous Lambda-class T-4A model that we see carrying Vader and the Emperor around in the original trilogy. The manufacturer, CNR Fleet Systems, never actually planned on producing the ship, but once Krennic got a glimpse of the concept design for it, he became fascinated by it and insisted they make one for him. Due to their lack of popularity and being technologically outpaced by the Lambda-class shuttle, mass production of the ship didn't last long. As a result of this, Krennic made sure to keep his ship in prime condition throughout the entire decade that he used it. Number 5. Aesthetics. Being a gifted architect, Krennic was responsible for not only overseeing the construction of the Death Star, but also converting the government buildings on Coruscant into military command centers. His designs were used to replace the Republic architecture throughout the entire galaxy with the bold, brutal face of what became the Imperial aesthetic. Number 6. Architect. It's made very clear in Rogue One that Krennic played a significant role in the Death Star's completion, but Catalyst goes into much greater detail about how useful of an asset he really was. Not only was he responsible for recruiting Galen Erso and manipulating him into using his research on kyber crystals to power the Death Star, he also convinced Poggle the Lesser to provide his hive of Geonosians as the primary workforce for the station's construction. Krennic also orchestrated the delivery of various resources like construction equipment, building materials, weapons, and kyber crystals to the Empire. Number 7. Double Agent. Although Krennic didn't make his first official appearance until the Rogue One teaser was dropped in April of 2016, his character was conceptualized several years ago. Originally, he was conceived as a character for the live-action television series that we've talked about before. The show, like Rogue One, was going to tell the story of how the Rebellion got their hands on the Death Star plans. Only in that story, Krennic was a double agent on Jyn Erso's team who secretly reported to the Imperial Security Bureau. So really, they didn't depart far from the initial conception of the character. In both versions, he's a manipulative snake. Number 8. Working class. Some of you may have noticed that Krennic doesn't have the posh English accent that most Imperial officials have.
We will then crush the rebellion with one swift stroke.
This was a style choice made by director Gareth Edwards, who wanted to portray Krennic as much more working class. Because he wasn't of the principled Coruscanti class or raised with strict discipline like Wilhuff Tarkin, he wasn't one to engage in debates and politics. Instead, he'd often let his volatile temper get the best of him, causing him to make rash decisions that would ultimately lead to his death. Number 9. hands-on. What I find so interesting about Orson Krennic is his willingness to put himself in the line of fire. It's not a trait we've seen many Star Wars villains have in the past. Whether it be a separatist like Newt Gunray, an Imperial Grand Moff such as Tarkin, or General Hux of the First Order, it seems like mostly everyone at a high rank chooses to stay out of the trenches, and reasonably so. Krennic is one of the few exceptions. After tracking down Galen, he meets with him face to face on Lamu when he could have easily just sent the squad of death troopers to drag him kicking and screaming out of his home, and on Scarif he personally pursues Jyn and Cassian, even engaging in a firefight with them. You could definitely make the argument that if he held himself back and was a little more patient, he probably would have lived a little longer, but on some level you've got to admire how willing he is to put his neck on the line in order to achieve his goals. Number 10. Psychopath. It's noted on Wikipedia that Krennic displayed a lack of certain human qualities like mercy, compassion, and regard for innocent lives. This is shown numerous times throughout the Catalyst novel and Rogue One. For instance, he orders the destruction of the holy city of Jeddah, killing hundreds of thousands of innocent people for the sole purpose of testing out the Death Star's weapons. He also orders the firing squad on Eadu to execute the entire team of scientists responsible for researching kyber crystals despite them doing literally nothing wrong, and also not to mention he betrays longtime friends Galen and Lyra just so his plans for the Death Star's construction can keep moving forward. There's many more examples other than those three, but I think it's safe to say that Krennic might be one of the most malicious villains we've ever seen in the Star Wars universe. And that does it for this episode of Star Wars 101. Let me know your thoughts on Krennic and any recommendations you have for topics you want me to cover in future episodes in a comment down below. Also, hit that like button if you haven't yet, subscribe for weekly Star Wars content, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and consider checking out my Patreon. Thank you all so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.